It may feel like just another day at the office.
This one here?
Yeah.
But occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes, bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter.
I keep being invisible at all times.
Your actions can make a
So we're
difference
looking
for your
for, make
safety
sure there's nothing in your
and
hand, you
survival.
could be involved.
Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
All right, so let's just talk about that movie again really quickly, and let's just go over that for a second, and a couple of things we want to add on that. First off, when at the very end, when they committed to their actions and they, in that lunch break room, what did we notice about? There were 5 people in that room. What did we notice about one of the 5? Paralyzed. She froze. Okay, the natural reaction to fear. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. That's a natural reaction. But the message is that if you're going to commit to your actions, and we chose this video. This was actually put out by the city of Houston. Right? Department of Homeland Security has a similar video that they use, but we thought this one was a little bit better. But the key point was they improvised weapons. Chair, the fire extinguisher. I mean, they were going to use the fire extinguisher as a club. But if you sprayed that fire extinguisher at that person coming in, that's going to interrupt their thought process. Enough for you to maybe then do something more, or pull them aside or whatever. One of the things we talk about sometimes is something simple. And again, how quick can you react? We understand the reality versus when we think about outside the box. But a can of Hornet spray shoots 20 feet. Okay, you spray that in somebody's eyes, it's going to momentarily disrupt them enough for you to run or do something else. When we did this training at the schools, you saw the person with the chair. When we were training this at the school, I had a teacher run at me when I broke into the room, came with the chair, ran at me with the chair. Now, even though I was in character and so forth, my natural reaction was I hit the floor because she came at me like this, full speed. There was no way that I was going to stand there, even though this was supposed to be pretend. I moved, okay, because that was my natural reaction, right? And it's a natural reaction. A lot of times what we'll do sometimes as we get to this point in the presentation, Dan out of the blue will throw something at me. And even though we do this time after time after time, and I know he's going to throw something at me, it always catches me unaware. My first reaction is to duck, because it's a natural reaction. So some of these counter that we talk about, again, simple things. If you notice, they weren't necessarily advocating tackling the person, but that's an option as well. That's an option. We call that swarm. We call that swarming on the person, and taking them down. But the thing is that, again, if your life's in danger, it's the last resort, don't be a sitting duck is essentially what the Department of Homeland Security is advocating.
We're going to continue to talk, and we're going to walk this with you here before we finish at noon. But we talked on the way in at the front desk. You have a hot cup of coffee or a hot cup of tea in the morning, and somebody comes up, and guess what you're going to do? And somebody's right there in front of you. They come in to say hi, or they just come in. Next thing you know, you see a rifle come up from underneath their jacket. What are you going to do? You have a stapler on the desk, you have a coffee mug, you've got a pair of scissors. And we're going to go through this. And we're saying, and we're hoping, again, 4 times more likely to be struck by lightning. But why not go ahead and educate and inform people and make them think about this and think about that door with a nice lock on it to go in there. I went in the kitchen to get a nice back room with it. Why not give us the skills to do that now, so if it does happen, you're able to do those things. Let's hope it never happens. But if it does, here's some small, simple things that we can do to protect ourselves or others.
So continuing, believe it or not, we've actually gone through 2 of the 4 parts of the planning process, and that was prevention and mitigation, and then being prepared. And everything we showed you up to this point in time was to try to be prepared. Now we need to talk about response. We have a few slides on this, because really, at this point, if we've done our homework, put everything in place, we've practiced and so forth, responding, as much as we don't want to respond, we should now know what to do. But the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to be making our plan during a crisis. Right? That's why it's important to do all this beforehand. So this is not the time to be making it from scratch, is when we have to respond. Right? But when the response is happening, and this is where we tend to get complacent sometimes, we have to acknowledge that a crisis is happening. Some emergency is happening. And we have to activate our emergency management team in some form, or our emergency management system, right? And be prepared if the event calls for it to either evacuate, shelter in place, or use the new lockdown procedures. And then again, communication, as Dan said, as much as we would like to say that We have reverse 911, we have a great communication system and so forth. We have limited personnel and things have to happen in sequence, and we try to get that information out as quickly as we can, but sometimes you may have to do the communication yourself. But very important, any information you can give to responding police officers or firefighters, any information you can give us can help us solve the problem. Right, so that's important when we actually have an event going on. Now, as we're going through the event, keep in mind what I said earlier, media will show up, media will look for something. If you had an event, let's say, again, I like to use structural collapse or a fire, inside your building, where they may turn around and come to your director and say, can you give us some information here? So part of your plan may be to start thinking about a press release. To work with the fire and the police, because they'll have their own press releases, but you as the owners or the occupants of this building, you may want to develop your own press release. This is where we're going to be relocated for the next couple of weeks, so this is what we're going to do. All right, first aid. Keeping in mind that sometimes when you have this in here for larger groups like the schools or the hospitals, that you may have to help administer first aid. Because with everything going on, and we only have a certain amount of resources, and it takes time for our mutual aid partners to get there, and eventually we'll have plenty of EMS on scene. But you may be required just to help with some, quick emergency bystander first aid. And then internally, again, if we can't come back into this building, what do we need for equipment or supplies for us to continue on with our operations? Right? And this has to be, this is usually what you're thinking of. You look at your plan, but these are questions you're asking yourself as the emergency is happening. These are action items that you need to be taking. I like to say this all the time, that emergencies are unexpected, they're unpredictable, they take many forms. We can't be prepared for every single emergency, but if we have a plan in place and we're practiced and we have options now and we know what to do, we can handle this emergency. And again, activate your team. If you have a team, get them involved, and then use your plan. All right, again, once you determine there is a crisis, what is the magnitude? All right, where is it happening? What is it? Again, we just can't be complacent and think it's not happening here. Your roles and responsibilities, this is where we kind of extend a little bit. So if we're actually training you in incident command system, and you start to kind of move this out, you might have somebody that is in charge of notifying all of your participants. You might have someone else who's in charge of staff. You might have somebody who's in charge of logistics, getting things that you might need to recover, and so forth. So you want to know what your roles are, and everybody needs to act in their roles. And this happens through constant training. Most importantly, and we say this over and over again, do not delay in notifying public safety, and utilize your team, okay? Utilize your incident management team. Get them in. They may not be on site all the time, but start gathering them up so you can have your plan and put your plan into place. We talked about the protective measures. If necessary, initiate these protective measures. This is where we go when we talk about the fire alarm again. The fire alarm goes off, we just don't assume that it's a false alarm. We get everybody out of the building. And that's part of your plan. And if you get the word to shelter in place, you do it. Trust your leadership. This is something that we try to get across, especially to other groups. Is, trust the people that are in charge. Trust the emergency responders. But as a leader, you're going to go a long way by having that calm, confident air about you. Your people will follow you more when they know that you're in control. Communications, we've gone over this enough times now. It's really important that we have it within the facility, that we keep our staff informed. But it's also think about our community. You have a large population that you may cater to that may not have been involved in the incident, but do utilize this facility. So make sure that we communicate to the community as well as to what's going on.
It's real important too, as you know, rumors can go flying uncontrolled. And we talk about an escalation when you have an emergency situation, and some people let it really go out of control. What we try to do is give you the plans and the knowledge and know-how so that when something escalates, we get to plateau it. And then we try to de-escalate it as soon as possible and get it back to normalcy. So real important that good communication out to everybody. They will hear a written statement that says the same thing that you put out to the 250, 300, 400 members of the center, that they'll hear the same exact thing, because then rumors won't take on and we can start to de-escalate the situation. So just things like that are real important.
And what can help with that is like, yes?
What's PIO?
I'm just gonna tell you, what can help you with that is identifying within your plan, and this falls under the incident command system. I talked about earlier about incident command is about management and about having functions. One of the functions of an incident command system is to have somebody designated as your public information officer. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the public information officer is gonna be the one always talking to the press, but it may be somebody that you identify that's really good at writing, okay, and can take information that you give them and put it into a press release, understands how press releases are formed, because there is a format that, the news agencies use. And this might be your go-to person to say, we need to develop this press release to get it out on our website, the town's website, distribute to newspapers and so forth, and they're your go-to person. It is one of those functions of the incident command system. It's an identified function, and usually we identify somebody that's usually somebody with an English degree or something like that, that's really good at writing. All right? Again, that helps us with action plans as well. By definition, an action plan should only last 12 hours. So if this is a prolonged event, every 12 hours we need to update our faculty and staff as to what the next action plan is going to be. A lot of times, if it's an ongoing thing, we have change of personnel, change of shift. They need to be briefed as to what's going on. So action plans, even if they're really simple, we should have an action plan of what we're going to do.
There's nothing new here, I don't think, except going over the different things that you need to hear and see. There's nothing new that what you would do every day. And if something major happened here, you would all pull together and all the rest of it. What we're trying to do is give you that heads up so that you already have it in place, so God forbid something happens, and that you're working together as a team, and that you know who to communicate with, and that you already have something created, because it will help us de-escalate, get back to normalcy. Because Rick's going to talk about normalcy and recovery in just a moment, which we're into right now. But it's nothing new. It's just being able to talk about it, expand a little bit, ask some questions, and say, hey, how can we make it better? And that's all we want to do.
And to give you some sense also of the standardization that we see across the nation on this. So again, as Dan said, you probably would just naturally make an action plan, but you may not think of keeping everybody updated and thinking about how things change over 12, 24, 48, 72 hours, which leads us into recovery. Because again, what our goal is, no matter what the incident is, our goal is to get back to normalcy. No matter what it is that we're doing, we want to get back to the business as usual. And that's recovery. That's the last part. And we need to plan for recovery as well. We just can't let it happen on its own. We need to think about it in advance so that it happens smoothly. All right, so these are things that we can think of. First off, we want to get back to normalcy. So that's our goal. But what about our physical plan? Is there something with the facility that needs to be addressed? That has to be part of our plan. So we need to think about, was there any damage to the physical plan? As well as the community, restoring the sense of community out there. So letting the community know that we're getting back to normal. Right? If there was a crisis that was traumatic, right, usually revolving around death, what interventions are available? We go back to the second slide we showed at the very beginning when we talked about at the very bottom that some of our resources we have is mental health. This is where that could come in. If I have to have a crisis counselor come in to kind of help us cope with this, or places where you can identify to send people to who may be having a hard time. One of the things that we have to remember is that we all react differently, and we all recover at different points. Some of us can handle it really well, some can't. But we want to make sure that we identify that and at least let them know that there's help available should they need it. Right? And debriefings can help with that as well. Now, debriefings are simply to sit down and say, okay, this was the event. This is what we did. What did we learn from it? What could we have done better? Could we have done anything better? Maybe there was not. Maybe everything went smoothly. But at least it's a chance for us to kind of review it, and sometimes even pat ourselves on the back and say that was a good job. You did a good job. Because sometimes, especially with the first responders, sometimes that's all they need to hear. All they need to hear was you did your job, you did it right, you did what you were taught to do, and you did a good job. Even if it meant that somebody died. Okay, but they did what they were taught to do. Is sometimes a great way of providing intervention for that first responder by saying, you did exactly what you were trained to do, you couldn't have done anything more, you did a good job. And sometimes that makes all the difference in the world. So the debriefings can help, bringing everything together and learn from it. Again, we talked a lot about this, appropriate time for recovery. Everyone recovers a little bit differently. Anniversaries, when we think of anniversaries, when this came up with Sandy Hook, how were they going to handle it? Everyone wanted to do a big thing at Sandy Hook. People in Sandy Hook said, we don't want a big thing. Leave us alone. We don't want a big thing. All right? But, you know, we hear the anniversaries all the time, the anniversary of 9/11, the anniversary of the bombings in Oklahoma City, you know, so forth. But think about that, you know, you have something happen, how is that anniversary gonna be handled? And then you have the action reports, the lessons learned. So what did we learn from it? And what we wanna do is put that back into our planning, put that back into our plan. What did we learn? You know, we had the fire alarm go off. And I realized when the fire alarm go off that I couldn't hear it downstairs in the back room. So I need to now learn from that, and we need to put that in our capital plan. I need to add another speaker down there because I couldn't hear that. That's a simple action, after action report. Something simple as the fire alarm went off, and I just couldn't hear it. We fix it.
We don't have a PA system in this building.
Yeah, so a PA system might be something that down the road you may want to be looking at and putting in.
There's no way
So you
that
shot
if
that.
something happens here, that you can know at the main office.
Yeah, and then and we look at that in the schools as well. We look at the capability of them to be able to call off their phones and maybe make an all-school announcement right off their phone. We look at, you know, can they do a flash email out very quickly to everybody, from any computer. So these are things we identify with technology. And again, part of the recovery is going back to that preparedness. Everything is a circle. So again, in your plan, you know, who on your crisis response team might be responsible for certain actions? Who might be responsible for putting together a capital improvement plan because the facility was damaged? Or, you know, who's the go-to person to reach out to counselors and so forth? So these are different things that you just want to identify so you're not scratching your head during this crisis and thinking, well, who do I call? You know, where do I go? We want to have that in our plan. And again, we want to document things. As simple as it might be, we just want to document it so that we can learn from it and we can identify what worked, what did not, what can we put back into our plan if we have to.
Real important, one of the roles, you saw PIO, Public Information Officer, but one of the roles of incident command is a scribe. And a scribe is responsible for taking notes throughout the event and then after the event as you're doing what you need to do and responding and recovering afterwards. Because it's real important, if we don't write it down, there's a lot of it that will go by the wayside and we won't remember. And Rick talked about after-action reports. In Woburn, they went through a number of crises a number of years ago with losing students and parents and having issues that happened to this one school on one side of the city. And it was real important because one of our team members did a great job writing an after-action report on what they missed and what they could have done better. The next time, and it was only like 3 months later, they had another huge crisis happen. And he was away down at Cape Cod with a SWAT training, and they called him and said, what do we do, what do we do, what do we do? And he says, go to my bottom drawer, look under this, and what did they do? They pulled the after-action report from that last crisis, they read it through, and they said, we're not gonna make the same mistakes that we made this time. And there were 2 or 3 things that they took care of, and it was a tragic event, but it allowed them to de-escalate, allowed them to get back to normalcy, and they didn't forget about the people that they forgot about the first time. So having a scribe, and having an after-action report is really neat because down the road, you're gonna have to report to the trustees, you might have to report to your attorneys, you might, whatever the situation is, and to be able to have somebody jot that down. We dealt with a crisis up in Stone at the Central Elementary School. An elderly grandfather wanted to pick up the kids, drove over the curb, took off, unfortunately, legs and injured and put people underneath the car. They wrote 88 pages of notes from the very beginning when we arrived on scene and said, please assign somebody as a scribe. And they said, thank God we did because the litigation and the court and all the rest, they went back and they timed it, they dated it, and they put the general notes in, and guess what? It was the best thing that they ever did. So just to share with you how important it is to evaluate and document a major crisis, just so you have, okay?
And again, the crisis, a lot of times we think traumatic. But think about that winter storm that might do damage to your building, or the fact that we are somewhat in a floodplain here, okay? You know, that when FEMA wants to reimburse us for repairs to our buildings because of natural disasters, FEMA likes a lot of paperwork. Okay, they like a lot of paperwork, so they want everything documented. They want to know every time slip that we have, they want to know every dime that we spend. So the better records you have, yeah, really. So the better records you have can help us recover for you and get needed funds to repair facilities from natural disasters. All right, so again, recovery is all really a full circle. You know, everything we do, the four-point planning process is really a circle. All right, so again, once we recover, we put back into our plan what worked, what didn't work, and that circle begins all over again. And the plan is never good if it just sits on a shelf. You have to take that plan out, you have to review it, you have to exercise it. So with that, any questions? Yes?
Just a little clarification. during non-fire evacuation, you said grab your personal stuff and leave. But under the run slide, it said leave your belongings.
Well, again, different in that scenario there. Yeah, we're thinking more of an active shooter situation, right? So we probably should just delineate it a little bit. When I'm thinking non-fire evacuation, I'm thinking that something's happening inside your building that is important that you get out. You have slightly a little bit more time to react to it. It might be that, again, something happened, the gas leak in the kitchen, for example, that the gas stove, or downstairs, the gas is leaking. You're gonna evacuate the building because it's safer to do so. It's a little bit less of a rush to get out. So you're making the announcement, we're evacuating, grab your personal belongings, and you take off.
You get a phone call at the front desk, and again, you never know. Some crazy says, watch this, I'm gonna have some fun with them. There's a bomb inside your building, it's gonna go off in 10 minutes. It never happened. Same thing, and you get a PA system in the future, or you're able to say, folks, we need to evacuate the building right now. We want people to take this stuff and go and leave. That's gonna help us with the search area. So that's kind of two situations.
But
with the active
shooter, go ahead.
with the active shooter situation though, shots are fired or people are getting hurt or seriously, guess what, folks? Leave it where it is in place and rock and roll and go ahead and if you can get out safely, get out. If you can't, then barricade, secure yourself. And then the last thing is, maybe that backpack's got something in it that you can swing at them or hit them with or counter with. So it's all common sense. We go through it. We're going to walk you through. It's 25 minutes to 12 now. We're going to take 5 minutes worth of questions and discussion. Then what we want to do is we want to spend the last 20 minutes with you, getting up, and we're going to ask you some things. Very simple. There's no heavy duty. We're just going to try to see some of the buildings so you feel more comfortable before we leave today. And if we need to come back to visit with you again, we're more than happy to do that. Yes?
Danny, I'm thinking of the fact that most of us have run events here. And we have people who come in and they're all well-meaning. They come in for a glass of wine or for a discussion. And we're running it. And we have the responsibility of knowing what our action plan is. I'd love some ideas from you on ways that we can start a meeting or start an event that will put the people who come in, I want to say our audience, put our audience, excuse me, at ease, but will also make them aware that we are prepared. And we've all been on airplanes where they said, do all this
Yes.
stuff. Or, before we start, please turn off your cell phones, and we want you, just some kind of suggestions you might have of things that we could say as event planners that will put our audience at ease, but also let them know that we're prepared. I hope that's
After the
good.
nightclub fires for 10 years, or at least for 5 or 6 years, wherever you went, in a large setting, what would people do? They would say to you, welcome, turn off your ringers, the restrooms, they do the housekeeping piece.
Yes.
But they would say, we want to make you aware of where the emergency exits are and where the additional emergency exits in case we need to leave this room. And that's when you would say, here, out through those doors, and whatever you need to do. But that moment, and people, and I always used to sit up and go, wow, they're really squared away, because they took that extra 30 seconds to say, we want to make you aware of where the emergency exits are.
And what you can add to that, and again, without getting into detail, what you can add to that is just, and I would do that for every event that you do. For every event. It is required, it's required in theaters, it's required in performances, like the Winton Club. They do the Winton Club, they have to say it, right? And that's required now as a result. And we have a thing called crowd managers that are responsible for that. But there's nothing to say, no matter how big or small your event is, that you can't say at the very beginning, welcome. I'd like to point out our emergency exits. In the event of an emergency, our staff is well trained.
Yep, and there's 3 or 4 that I'm looking at right now. 3 for sure. Who can tell me where one of them is? Come on. The main door.
And then there's one right there.
Okay, now you're talking about the windows.
The windows.
Right, but that would be a last resort, but a good resort, because you open it and push through. But how about through the kitchen and out through that door? So I'm looking right now, so you've got 3 wonderful spots. So now you have 250 people in
But
here.
they're all in the same direction.
Yeah.
And if that's where the problem is, you have to have
Absolutely, and guess how many windows you have right along here that will be done? Yep, but now you look out and you're down 1 layer. But look at all these windows here, we'll put you at ground level, which are fantastic. So the key here is for your staff to know how to unlock and open those windows and be able to push them out, and they're very simple to do. But guess what? once or twice a year, they need to be manually checked and opened to make sure that they work.
Thank you.
First of all, but again,
Something that as an event planner, I.
well, and if you,
Hey, guess what? Take a chair, clear the window.
The other thing is
Mike's
most
bringing
of
up
these
some good points.
windows don't have openers.
Okay, so guess what? This is what the conversation's about. It's to say, let's have a meeting, let's pull together our folks after we take you through what we're gonna take you through here in the next 20 minutes, to say to you, let's not panic. We've been dealing with this building for how many years? Let's write down a list, and then let's say to us, how do we mitigate these problems before the renovation comes? And then what we do is we start to chip away at it a little bit. And that's what you do. And I like what Mike said. I can't get through one of those windows. Well, guess what? If you have to, take one of these chairs and blow out that middle, and at least now you've got a big wide opening, especially if you need to put somebody out of it that's disabled or that's
Push
slow.
them out.
You might
Now-
need to do that.
also, keep in mind, and again, I'm gonna touch on this very, very quickly, but making your announcement, not only identifying the exits, but that you have, please, in the event of an emergency, follow the staff, okay?
Or
Yeah.
in the event of an emergency, please gather over there, just so they know
Yeah,
where
you
to
can-
go.
But you have when we think about fires, which is usually the biggest evacuation concern, because if the fire's on that side, coming out of the kitchen, your exit may be blocked. We do have a fully sprinkled facility here, right? And that's, as long as we maintain that, sprinklers, there's never been a large loss of life in a sprinkler building.
We don't need to talk about that. So that-
Right, no, what I'm saying is for you as a staff to realize that, there are certain things that we're doing in place to try to, again, mitigate the problems from happening. All right, another quick question, then we're gonna take a walk. Anything else?
Because let me tell you, down in that, the fire room, it's beautiful, because you can go right out and through, downstairs and low. I'm thinking about this building all the times we've been here to do presentations. This is a great building to be able to get out of. It's very easy to get out of this building. And even with these 3 exits here, with lots of chairs and tables, you can still get many people, especially if, like Rick says, follow the staff. One goes this way, one goes that way, one goes that way, and off you go and you start to evacuate the building, okay? Go ahead, Judy, you had a quick question.
I was just going to ask about attendance. With schools, you've got attendance sheets that people take with them.
Sure.
Some of our classes, there's attendance taken, some not. In events, we do have sheets with people's names
Oh,
on it, but sometimes not. So how do you account for everybody in the building?
Well, that's when you may want to have a staff members, like the last one out, does a sweep,
Yeah.
so that if you're.
Too many doors.
Yes, right, but I mean, if you're in this room right now, and you're responsible, that this is your job, and, the alarm goes off, you're gonna walk through this room and just make sure that everyone's out of this room.
And if there's somebody here that can't move or doesn't want to move or whatever, as you go out that door, you say, there's one party, there's one female, there's one adult that's in this main room right now.
Over by the door.
Be specific, over by the door, and they couldn't get out or they didn't want to leave, and you just explain it to them.
And again, that could be bathrooms as well, you can go by, open up the bathroom and yell, is there anybody in there, anybody in here, and so forth. But you can do a quick sweep, and you can assign a staff member to, somebody's responsible for the lower level, somebody's responsible for the far end, somebody's responsible for this.
And just keep in mind, if there's an active threat or shooter going on, all bets are off.
Right, exactly.
You're to go, and then guess what? And now you've been informed about, and you've seen a video, and now what we want you to do is encourage, and you go on YouTube, and please encourage people to go on YouTube, look for the city of Houston, get out, hide out and take out, and you can show that to your family members, because you talked about home, you talked about the movie theater and all these other things. We ask people to start to view that, start to think about that. Have that conversation with loved ones to say, look, if you are at the Woburn Cinema, or you are at the Burlington Mall, and you start to hear what you think is something bad happening, please know where your exits are and be able to be in line and get out.
Again, keep in mind that we've given you a couple of different scenarios here, from a fire alarm going off to the inactive shooter coming in. And each one has to be handled a little bit differently. So as Dan said, if it's an event where we can sweep, we can get out, even if it's quick, fire alarm's going off, I'm making a sweep through this room, right, there's nobody here, and we get outside, and we can give with some assuredness that we have everyone accounted for. That's a little bit different than an active shooter, where it might be a free-for-all, and you're getting out and trying to get someplace. One thing we didn't talk about really quickly, and I apologize for this, and we're gonna get into this walk really quick. But one of the things we missed on it, because the Homeland Security video, or the Houston video, showed them getting out, and they made reference to getting out of line of sight, saw them get behind the fire engine, behind the big HVAC unit that they had there. One of the things that's important to keep in mind, that you don't want to be in line of sight in your building. So when if you do evacuate an active shooter, you want to get someplace that's out of line of sight. And when you want to usher, if it is an event where you're ushering people out, or you're trying to get people, try to get them to go. As you saw them, they grabbed in the movie, they grabbed that guy off the bike and brought him back to a point of safety. You someone have to do the same thing. We call it rally points for the schools. We have identified areas that are rally points that are out of line of sight of the building. Now for here, you might want to be on the other side of the Hope Church, right? That's out of line of sight. It's just so that if the person comes running out of the building, you're not right in your line of sight.
Ventilation systems being shut down if need be, if it's a hazardous material type of situation. It could even be signs on the door that says, this building is now sheltering in place. Please find refuge and call this number for more information. And you put them right on the door. Think about accounting for people, staff members, who's here, who's not here. Okay, evacuation. What happens if we did an announcement that says we need to evacuate the building at this time? What would we do? And then the last one is the worst case scenario. What happens if somebody was actively in the building doing harm to people? So those are 4 things that over the next 15 minutes, we're going to just talk to you a little bit about it. But right now what I'm going to ask you to do is, I asked Judy, and I don't believe we have a spot if the fire alarm went off right this moment. So if the fire alarm activated right now, Captain Tustin is out front. He's at a good spot for us to rally to in the front of the building. And then what he's going to do is after when we get to what we're going to do is we're going to evacuate the building now if there was a fire alarm, all of us. And if anybody has any issues or disabilities or whatever, let me know. We're going to go to where Rick is. Rick's going to talk for a couple of minutes about why that spot and how much further we need to be away. Then we're going to move to the front entrance of the building. We're going to go into the reception area and talk about that. We're going to go down into the fire room. And then we're going to finish up downstairs, just so you have those 4 spots in the next 15 minutes. Any questions, concerns? And then what we'll do is we're going to do this quickly. So the alarm is going off now. You know what the alarm sounds, and if you don't, know that there's strobes that flash also. So people who are hearing impaired, if they see the strobes, what are we going to do? So go ahead, out through whichever door you think you need to go to, but let's go to the front of the building at this time. There's no smoke being shown. No, please don't. And this would be the front evacuation. Rick's all the way down. It's great because you're not crossing out here, because fire apparatus will be coming, cruisers will be coming, and we're moving right down the sidewalk, and we're going to a place that's comfortable. You have some seats, so if somebody needs to sit down. You've also got the Mount Vernon van here, in case we can call across the back and have them send Mike over with the keys or whoever. Good.
They get that first round of the national box going off, as soon as they get that first round, a minute later they're going to be out the door. So this keeps you on the sidewalk, right? You're on the sidewalk. If we have to move you further away from the building because there's an actual fire, you still have a nice safe area that you can go to. If we have to relocate, you're already going in the direction, depending on the time of the day, you're already going to an area where you can get everybody to. You have plenty of room here to spread out, so if you're running an event, that's more than just your staff. You have a lot of patrons that are here. You have plenty of room for them to kind of spread out. Self-evacuation, we can't control that, so if some of your patrons decide to go home, at least you've gotten them out of harm's way, and then by that time the apparatus should be here, and if they go into their cars, they're at their own peril at that point. But at least you've gotten everybody over here.
We're limited with police officers. We put 4 officers on during the daytime, but as Rick said, there's 2 incidents going on. We might need a couple of folks to help us if we're going to go over to the auditorium to stand out and just stop traffic so that folks can walk across. Say you've got a class of 70 and you're walking them across, because guess what? It's a cold winter day, and you get them out and they don't have their keys and stuff because it's inside the building. So guess what? Somebody makes a quick call on their cell phone across to the town hall. Facility people here should probably program that in to the town manager's office, to a couple of different offices there to say, look, we've got a fire alarm going on, we're not going to be back. Most of the time it's a fire activation. You're here for maybe 8, 9, 10 minutes, and next thing you know, the fire gives the all clear, come on back in the building. But if the fire says we've got a leak or there's something going on here, we can't find the problem, what do we want to do? We want to start thinking about using there, or if the Hope Church, you have a relationship with the pastor at the Hope Church. And don't forget Kathy And this, I don't know if anybody has a set of keys or just the Mount Vernon house has, but you've got something that can open. You can put people inside here to warm up. Just some things to think about. And like Rick said, one layer. It was nice because stayed behind and cleared the room, was the last one out. She said to me, I'm clearing the room to make sure you're out. There's 2 guys that held the door. And guess what? You guys got out. There's benches here, so in case somebody has to sit down, you got a great spot.
Now, again, on a day-to-day basis, you really need, as far as part of your plan is concerned, on a day-to-day basis, ultimately someone has to be in charge, okay? And ultimately, all of these little reports, so whoever's responsible for sweeping a room or checking, you have to report to one central person, and that could change on a day-to-day basis, but that one central person should also report to the fire department, what happened, the alarms went off, or if they know what it is and or where it is, where it's going off, and also that everyone's out of the building or someone's still left in the building. So again, on a day-to-day basis, you may have to just identify who's going to be that point person that's going to report to the fire department. And again, it really should be someone of your more steady staff. That is, again, the point. Yep.
Everybody's accounted for in the back of the building.
Thank you. Again, so that, again, this is another thing too, if you're coming out multiple ways, okay? Now this is a nice spot if everyone's coming out the top floor. Now if you're coming out the lower exit and there's a different spot, you may want to say, I need to send somebody over as a runner and line of sight, because we do this in the school, so or if you have radios or cell phones, but line of sight is sometimes really good, all right? Everyone's good, they're good down there, and then you report to the fire department, everyone's accounted for in the back, everyone's accounted for in the front, the building is clear.
This building has really 4 lines of sight there, the other side here.
Yeah.
And that's the way that you guys need to talk about it as a committee. Say, look, we'll have 4 spotters go out,
Right.
and you can see visually, and everybody's good. Especially too when they give the all clear, because you don't want to leave that group
Right,
out back
back.
going like this.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on?
Maybe like in the schools, where we have folders,
Yep.
and we have red cards and green cards. we
And
hand out.
you could do that as well.
Maybe we should
Yeah.
institute that here.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it because usually it's a more of a dynamic situation, but there's no reason why you couldn't. We can do the red and green card system. We can go over that with the staff, and it's a very quick communication system. Red,
nice and bright.
green is for everyone accounted for. Red means that somebody's missing, or not accounted for. And a V-shaped pattern means that I have everyone, but I need to talk to someone. And it's very simple. So why don't we kind of yes?
Rick,
One quick point. Is there any reason you can't make the first step in the action plan by designating this the meeting place?
Yeah, you
right
can,
now?
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Do it. You can change it next week if you
Yeah,
want.
but no, this
There's
is
one now.
again for this level here. This gets you on off the street, off the parking lot, and you have enough space to spread out. And most of the time, it is plowed in the wintertime as well.
This sidewalk is often not plowed beyond.
No,
okay, it's
but
far
you got
enough.
right. As long as you have some plowed area.
Now we need to do this, right? There's no reason why a phone call to the Department of Public Works, as we're all working together, could say, we've gone over our emergency crisis plans. You could even email Jay and Mike, and what they would do now is they would start to clear this pathway for you, but they wouldn't do it right after a storm, but they would probably do it within 24 hours. And that's what we're doing with the schools that need to, for that enhanced lockdown, that they're going to beat feet to go to what we call a rally point. We really didn't cover the rally point today, but what we're going to ask them to do is plow a couple of paths through their fields so that after the storm, so that they can get off into their area.
Really happy.
But we take it
Very simple.
Yeah.
You do,
Why
but what's
can't-
real nice is to have that, the one with the snowshoe, just
Yeah,
come
yeah.
right down and blow one line. That's
It's,
all.
I'm gonna tell you, it's a nice idea, but they plow everything from this lot up here.
Yep.
This pile will be 25 feet high.
Yep.
That kid can't go through that with that machine.
Okay, so
Can't happen.
Even,
I mean, you
even
can
if it's just
ask,
another
but-
10 feet. I mean,
the key is
again,
to ask.
right. And again, worst case scenario in the wintertime, we know that the parking spaces are going to be plowed. So even if you're standing off the
Well, that's my
sidewalk,
point. If we take it here and clear the sidewalk, you can, to get to the town hall, you can walk through.
you could. It's just that,
Right?
again, depending on the situation, if it's a fire alarm coming, just keep in mind the fire apparatus is coming in that way. So we want to stay in a safe zone as much as possible.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all, just as much as possible.
let's do this. Let's move into the front where the reception area is, and we'll talk there for 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll go ahead and take you downstairs. Everybody knows this room here and feels comfortable coming out. And then we'll go downstairs and we'll finish up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, come on in a little bit closer because there's other people here. We're just going to spend 2 or 3 minutes here. But here's the lifeblood of the organization. You have the door that's open, you have doors that are open throughout the event, throughout the day. And you know what, it's a welcoming, open place, just like our schools are. The schools now have secured all the doors except for the front door. Or now they have a buzzing system, or they push a buzzer and they say, "Hi, may I help you?" "Yep, hi, I'm here to bring in little Johnny's lunch," or whatever. Now, are those buzzing systems 100% safety, security? No, it's not. What it is that personal contact that you have by making observations and people seeing and knowing that somebody left here yesterday very irate. And maybe somebody left here yesterday making threats, saying that they're going to be back. Well, guess what? We hope that it would be reported through the chain of command, and they would call us so that we could go and check and see, does that person have any license to carry a firearm, an FID card? Have we had any issues with that person in the past? We've been there 4 or 5 times, right? So it escalates threat assessment, as Rick talks about, and that's what we do on the police side. Assess the threat, go out and deal with it. Maybe it's somebody that just was having an off day and they made the threat, and you know what, you're never going to have an issue with them again. But it is somebody that comes back to cause a problem. So again, that's how we assess a threat. That's how verbal and physical. And the area here is great because you've got a big desk to block for people to stay on this side of it, except you've got these double doors and people can access those, which isn't a problem. But as I looked around very quickly, the library has that locking mechanism on the door. All of these 3 offices have locking mechanisms on the door that does not need a key. You just push the button. And all you do is as you push the button, you make sure the door is locked and you shut it. Here, I see a cup of coffee. Okay, same thing, coffee. I see a plant. I see a phone. I see some things here that could be thrown, and that person not try to confront, but move into the office and say, "Judy, we have a bad situation, call 911 and shut the door." Judy's already practiced opening her window, so if we had to get out, we could go out that way. I just saw Kathy. Kathy says that little window down below, she said it'd be tight, but she says she could get out of it. These are the things that we want to just make sure we feel comfortable with. The sliders that are here. Somebody bypasses you, and next thing you know, they're up there or they're down in that room. You've got sliders, you've got doors. This is what we want you to be aware of. You get the stairs going down and out the back. Think about multi-ways of getting out of here, and also ways of disrupting somebody. In their face, and a quick move into here. Let's talk about communications. What happens if the power goes off here in the building? Does the phones die?
No,
Yeah, I'm Frank today.
no, not usually.
The phones do not. They're not on a system?
We're on the town system.
Town system.
Yeah, the town system, but I.
Okay, because what we find is if they're all connected here, and there's one major system that goes, and you can, Centrics or transfer calls and all that kind of stuff from here, that is on a system somewhere. When the power goes down, the electricity in the phone goes down. We don't want to try it, but if it does go out, what we ask is, where's your fax line? Where's your fax machine? Excellent, great. Real important, if you don't have one already, what you want to do is go to Target and buy a $9.99 telephone, analog phone. And what you want to do is be able to unplug the fax machine, the power cord, because if the power goes out and you plug the phone into that outside line, you have a live outside telephone line. But remember, if you're calling in, use the fax line. Or if you're calling out, it's the fax line that you want to talk to, okay? Because a lot of times Rick talks about cell phones. If there's a major crisis going on, 9/11, I was over at the high school, and everybody started using cell phones, and what happened?
Went down.
Couldn't get out. So you could call the police, you could call the fire, you could make some phone calls by that analog phone if the power ever went out, because that analog line will never go out on you, okay, unless the poles come down. Okay? So those are just some simple communication pieces. Let's do this. Rick, what else for this area?
I think, just know that you do have a fire alarm pull station right there behind Dan, okay, and they are at the exits.
Can I ask you, I'm sorry, a question about that? We have, through the main entrance, there was a fire pole there, and accidentally, a couple of times, that people have pulled that thinking it's a handicap access. Would you suggest that you move it there and put some?
You can't move it, but what we can do is put a tamper on it. Put a tamper cover on it.
Plastic cover, very simple. It'll protect you. You can still lift the cover, it sets off a little alarm, but at the same time, people will say, oh, it's not good. Put it in this That's right. The other thing too, Judy and Mike, do you have panic alarm capabilities here? Who's your alarm company? American Alarm. Is there a way that you can hit one button that will send a panic alarm to American Alarm, then they call us and say the Jenks Center has a panic alarm coming in?
Is there one at that desk the person can step on? No,
There isn't.
there needs to be.
Just something to inquire about. Okay, Mike Strahan, give Mike a call, he's really great. And then, as it was just brought up, we're starting now in the new schools. The Vincent Owens School now has a panic alarm, one button that's covered by a protected shield so it doesn't get accidentally hit, because now when that comes in on our fire alarm board, it comes in as active threat alarm, this school, and what we do is we send everybody, because it's that worst, and we train the staff. You do not push that if little Johnny's got a nosebleed or he scraped his knee. This is in case there's something very tragic happening in your school. You hit that button, and you still try to make the 911 call, and you still try to activate any other way of notifying us, because if one fails, we want to have multiple ways of trying to get to us. And then guess what? We know that comes on the board, we're gonna be sending everybody we train appropriately for that type of situation, okay? Yes?
Wouldn't it make good sense to make a list of all the exits in this place and have them posted in quite a few places so that?
I think that's a great idea, and I also spoke to Bob about when you guys do the renovation or whatever, we work with this floor plan company, and they do a great job, and it's very reasonable, and we can go ahead and have floor plans created for you as long as the trustees want to absorb that cost, and it's web-based, you can get them, you can print them, you can do everything you want, but let me tell you, all the doors will be numbered, all the floor plans, everything will know, and it's a nice, and it's very affordable to do, so if you're interested in putting that together.
Not yet.
We
Well,
talked
have
about it.
Current ones, but things are gonna be changing, so, especially if we get more handicap doors and stuff and pushing the building out, so it won't be.
But I'm saying, if you have something now,
Let's
you
post
should post that.
Yep, and it shows where your AED is, it shows where your shut-offs are, it shows where your doors and your accesses are. So it's kind of a nice thing to have, and then again.
Kind
work
of.
with your staff. Yeah, hi there. Okay, we're 2 minutes past 12. Everybody okay? Do you want to walk downstairs
Yes.
just for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll finish up? Okay, let's do it. Mike, lead the way.
You got notes
Stairs
on
don't have locks, and these don't either, okay? So a lot of times, bathrooms in schools have that one-turn latch key, and it's pretty good. But the goal is to look, and again, when you're down here, where can you secure? Does that room have a lock on the door? I didn't get a chance to do any recon before I came down. But look at what you do have. You do have egress here, egress going back up the stairs. Where else do we have egress? Nothing. Okay, just these 2 doors down here. Okay, and what's nice is these windows do go up. You might have to put an end table or a chair, and people might have to just climb up, but you're not gonna drop a distance. You're gonna be right there on the ground level. But these are things to think about. Mike, I know a lot of the mechanical room and everything's down here. That's okay.
Yes.
What's been great
Oh my
about
God, I know what I'm thinking.
What's been great about this morning is you get a chance to hear some things, see some things, but now it stimulates conversation. Now the key is not to be overwhelmed by all this, because you know what, right off the bat people are going to say, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. No. Take a breath, think about it, digest it, and then come back and be able to sit down and have a little meeting and just talk about some of the things that you can do and some of the things you can't do. We just talked about there's an application now for wireless to do a panic alarm. There's some things that you're gonna bring to the table that we're gonna learn from you guys, because there's things that are out there. But I grabbed the fire extinguisher from down to the door, and as we already saw, now it's pretty heavy, but there's no reason why somebody couldn't put it on a table and deploy this, pull the pin, and what happens? Just what we talked about, right? So here's another tool that you have throughout the building.
Is there one upstairs?
There's got to be one.
I didn't realize.
And Rick does a course on fire suppression, and it's real important that you don't aim it at the flames, you aim it at the base of the flames. It's really important. So you've got to go low to put a fire out, so always keep that in mind, especially at home. If you have an oven fire or something on the stove, stay low to it and then come up to it to suppress it. Yeah, or put a lid on it. But they're down talking doors and stuff. How about questions? That's good. They're all into locks and doors. I'm just glad that we were able, 1, to do this. Judy, thank you for setting this up. That's the most important thing. 2 is just fortunate enough to be able, Rick and I, to do this. Our chiefs let us do this, which is great public service for everybody. And then the third thing is we're going to encourage you to meet, talk, look over the summer, and start to put together what you need, and then just call us again, we'll come and sit with you. The other thing that we do is we develop tabletop exercises. We develop tabletop exercises that you could go and have your incident management team, your crisis response team, whatever you want to call it, in the school's incident management team, because we don't want to overwhelm people. When you say crisis, people always think that we're in crisis. Incident management team, we deal with incidences. And what's nice is if you have an IMT or an incident management team or whatever you want to call it, we'll come back and we'll do a tabletop exercise. You guys get your plan out, and you talk about some of these things that we talked about, the floor plans and some of the different things that we've talked about today. we'll be more than happy to consult with you at any time. But then the last thing is, instead of going and trying to do a full drill or an exercise or whatever, we always say you've got to crawl and walk and never run. So what we did today is we started crawling. You guys are already standing with 1 foot up because you're already ahead of the plan. You guys have a plan, we're together, we know what we're doing. The next thing is to stand up on both feet, and when we do that, it would be maybe upstairs, we get around a table, and Rick and I come in and we run a tabletop for you to say, hey, it's a January day after heavy snow, it's 10:36 in the morning, you guys have to figure what's going on, and in the small room, we have a roof collapse, and there's a class, or there's cards, there's something going on. What do we do? How do we handle this? And everybody goes like this, ah, we go like this, slow down. What's the human instinct? Let's call, and then immediately, let's call 911, let's do this, let's do that. Next thing you know, the emergency plan comes out, they look at it, who do we need to notify, what do we need to do, where can we go? And you guys work it through just around the table for 1 hour, and next thing you know, you go, wow, we did all right. We understood this. Or you find a deficiency so you can say, you know what, we dropped the ball here, and that's how you learn. Now you do 1 or 2 or 3 of those, and then if down the road you guys want to do an exercise, and you want to use your staff, and maybe we get some other people around and say, hey, if something did happen here, what would we do and how do we do it? And we do real time by saying it's 12 noon, and you have the lunch crowd in, you're just finishing with your class. What happens if there is a gas leak down here in the basement and starts to seep up through the building? Just things like that to give. It doesn't have to be an active shooter, because guess what? We hope that never ever happens. 4 times more likely to be in that type of situation. But at least you have the tools now. You have a video. You have some things to talk about. You have Rick and I as a resource. Okay, guys, we just pulled this off the wall and we showed how quick it was to be able to use this as a tool to spray. Rick, you got anything?
No, just saying again, as we not to take up too much time, but as we continue on this. What we didn't really get a chance to do today, and we'll do it next time we visit with you, is some of the barricading techniques that are simple to employ. So I just looked down. I was just saying to Mike down in the other room there. I mean, even that room down there needs a key to lock, but there's so many tables there that if you just pile a few tables in front of it, that would slow somebody down from coming in. And that's really what the goal is. But as Dan said, continuing training. You've gotten a real good overview today, and that's really what it is. This is an overview. To really take this further, we need to continue to work with you and make sure that we have everything in place for you. And it's continual training. It's just continual
discussion, conversation, and just being able to deal with this on a regular basis every once in a while. And then guess what? We hope it never happens, but if it does, at least you've got some tools, and we hope you share this with your families and neighbors and things that, some of the things to keep them safe.
What was the Houston website again?
Yeah, I don't have the website.
It's just Houston.gov. Okay, Ready Houston, I think, is their actual website, Ready Houston. But it was Run, Hide, Fight is the name of the video. And if you just go to the Houston, if you want to Google it on YouTube, it was Run, Hide, Fight by Ready Houston, Houston.gov. And let me just end with this real quick and let you go on your way. Dan had mentioned over and over again throughout our presentation, we're talking about life skills. One of the little things I like to pass on when we talk about exits, I mentioned about knowing your exits when you go into like a restaurant or a theater or so forth, or the mall, as Dan mentioned out. But a couple of things that, we've shared ideas with each other. But, hotels, for example, when people go into hotels, I'm very faithful about counting the number of doors between me and the nearest exit. And that's the first thing I do when I go to a hotel. I drop my bags, I look at the little thing on the back of the door, and then I go out, and I go, where's my exit, left or right, cross the hall, same hall in the middle, and then I count the number of doors. That way there, in case I can't see for some reason, I'm crawling along, all I gotta do is count doors between me and to where the exit is. Well, that same philosophy can happen in almost any type of setting. A lot of offices now are cubicles. Okay, or again, if we lost our site here, knowing your layout here. So if I'm in that back room and I'm coming along, how many doors can I count before I know that I can take a right and go out this exit in case I can't see for some reason? So that philosophy of kind of knowing your area and trying to count landmarks and cubicles, desks, tables, in a hotel, the number of hotel rooms. Dan always brings with him a portable flashlight. And that's something, so he always has a portable flashlight. And it's just, it's one of those things that he always thinks of, you know, that he relays out in the stories. I always talk about counting the doors, but it just, these
You're a
little things.
firefighter.
Well, that's true, that's
We
true.
want it,
But
part of this information.
But
too.
this is stuff that, you know, again, you know, everyone, I'm not saying everyone should be doing it, but it's just simple little things that when you think about knowing, really it's knowing your surroundings. Knowing your surroundings, and people think that they can't, you know, do that in an office setting. Well, you can do that in an office setting. You can do that in almost any setting, just to know and have these little things, you know, these just what ifs and just in cases type of thing. So, thank you very much for having us here today.
Thank you very much.